So, welcome to part 4 of A Story from Mu. And as you recall, at the end of part 3, many stars put out a call to the ancestors or anyone who could help. This could not be the destiny of her people, she cried. So we begin with what's happening with SunWalker on that very day. SunWalker moved with the wave of people that were gathering around the Great Mound. He had traveled here with 3 companions who were like a brother to him. They joined him to find out what this new ceremony was all about. SunWalker had been feeling anxious for the past 3 days. It has something to do with the ceremony, he kept thinking. Why do the people think they need something new, rather than following the proven ways of the Sacred One? Upon his arrival at the village, the people graciously provided him and his companions with food and drink. The food tasted good, prepared in the old way, but he hesitated about their drink, since he noticed a strange behavior in those who consumed it. The ones who drank the fragrant liquid did not seem to know their own thoughts. He chose instead to drink the water he had brought, and motioned for his friends to do the same. Now that the crowd of people had pulled him to the base of the Great Mound, he could see the back of a young girl with flowers in her hair being led up the steep steps. When she nearly tripped twice, his natural instinct was to go to her aid. Although the crowd was tightly woven together, SunWalker decided to work his way closer. Mother, he thought in his mind, as memories came forth of the many times she had told him stories about the ancestors before he would go to sleep. What would the ancestors say about such a ceremony? His mother's thoughts came into his mind. They would send lightning sounds from the stars. Startled by the response, SunWalker searched the sea of faces. Could it be that his mother was alive and here? SunWalker, his mother exclaimed when she finally realized that she was not making up this conversation in her mind. The crowd crying, "Oh!" brought both of their attentions back to the young one being led up the steps. She had fallen backwards, caught again by the guards, but her face dangled backward and all could see who she was. "Keymyu!" shrieked SunWalker, and simultaneously his mother let out a high-pitched shrill that the ancestors of Sacred One used to use to silence, balance, and heal the people. An ancient memory ignited within the people in the crowd, because they all turned toward the one making the sound, bowed their heads, and remained still as the tones moved through them like a tuning fork. They remembered that when Sacred One made those tones, all good things would come to the people if they bowed their heads and attuned in reverence. Therefore, while focusing on the tones, they were unaware of SunWalker racing up the mound to rescue his daughter, Keymyu. However, Feathered Trumpet was fully aware of what was happening. Followed by Raven, he raced down the steps to reach the young girl before the stranger did. Raven did not care about the girl nor the stranger. She decided to use the confusion of the moment to take possession of the feathers. She had carefully prepared herself with potions and spells of protection so that touching the feathers would not harm her this time. SunWalker arrived at his daughter only seconds before Feathered Trumpet. The guards, who had their heads bowed and were toning to the sacred sounds, suddenly snapped out of that state and struggled with a stranger who was trying to take the young girl. After lying Keymyu down gently, SunWalker used the feet kicks that Sacred One had taught him, to knock the guards unconscious. "The feathers," he faintly heard in his head in the voice of his daughter. And as Feathered Trumpet lunged toward him with a knife, SunWalker instantly recognized the sacred feathers in his other hand. He knew that his daughter was telling him to rescue the feathers as well. With a skillful kick, he sent the feathers arching into the air, out of Feathered Trumpet's hand. As Raven reached for them, she suddenly recognized SunWalker, and her moment of hesitation allowed him to kick the feathers upward again, while he knocked Feathered Trumpet and Raven into each other and into unconsciousness. Then, catching the feathers and placing them in his daughter's hands, he swiftly moved down the Great Mound. Many stars thanked the ancestors as she continued the toning which kept the people bowed in reverence. She could sense that someone had moved in behind her, but stayed focused in toning the sounds. SunWalker's friends joined him as he raced into the jungle. The feathers in his daughter's hand seemed to point the direction they should take. Knowing the power in those feathers, he followed whichever way they pointed, and his companions to guide the path they took. However, one who is most skilled in trail finding managed to read the signs clearly. Laughing Wolf, the guardian of the family, had returned to the dwelling when feeling Many Stars' distress call. Her footprints led him to the Great Mound, where a crowd had gathered, and a young one was being led up the steps. By her gait, Wolf immediately knew that it was Keymyu, and that her grandmother must be nearby. When the ancient sounds came forth, the crowd faced toward Many Stars, and it was easy for Wolf to get close to her. He watched SunWalker rescue his daughter, and knew that he must do the same for Grandmother Many Stars. So the moment the sacred sounds ended, Wolf shouted to the people, "Look, Feathered Trumpet has been hurt, and the one who took the maiden away went that way," pointing in the opposite direction that SunWalker took. In all the confusion, when the people were trying to help Feathered Trumpet, Wolf carefully led Many Stars away to safety. Wolf listened quietly, as Many Stars told him what he must tell SunWalker when he found him. When they arrived at Many Stars' dwelling, they found that Steady Turtle had returned at his usual slower pace. After quickly gathering supplies for traveling, they all started out after SunWalker. Wolf raced ahead to give SunWalker the urgent message from his mother, while Steady Turtle, equally skilled in trail finding, followed at a pace that was easier for Grandmother Many Stars. SunWalker had reached a ravine. He and his friends needed to stop and catch their breath. As the companions stood guard, SunWalker placed his daughter on some soft grass. She struggled to form the thoughts that she needed to tell him. "My father," Keymyu said in her thoughts, "my heart soars to see you again, but we have little time left together. They gave me a liquid that would not only numb me from being able to run away, but would also eventually kill me. Take these feathers, my father, and use them for the inward journey to the Ancient Ones. Then you must lead our people back to the sacred ways." Her thoughts drifted off into Cloud Dancer's mist, so no more words came. SunWalker was startled. Was he going to lose his only daughter after just finding her? Are the feathers bringing her death, since they were told that no one should hold them, except for Sacred One or their rightful heir? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a scuffle behind him. One of SunWalker's friends was holding Wolf's arms behind him in a deadly grip and said, "He says that you know him." It only took seconds for SunWalker to recognize the face of the guardian that Sacred One had provided for his family. "Yes," SunWalker acknowledged. "Let him go. He is a friend." And immediately he embraced Laughing Wolf. "I bring you an urgent message from your mother, Many Stars," began Wolf. Then, looking around, he added, "Only you should hear these words." So SunWalker walked a ways away with Wolf and motioned for the others to keep an eye on his daughter. "Your mother said that I must tell you these things as close to her words as I can, so I will do my best." She began this way: "My son, it is with great peace and also sorrow that I tell you these things. On the night the sacred mountain exploded in our homeland, I was awakened by sparkling water leaving our dwelling. You had gone on the journey that Sacred One had requested, so why would sparkling water leave in the middle of the night with an arrow in her hand?" I felt compelled to follow her, after making sure that Keymyu was sound asleep. I followed sparkling water into the sacred cave. There she was confronting Sacred One. She wanted to know what had happened the night that she had spent with him just before he insisted that she marry you, SunWalker. Shortly after that, we all went to the island of the heated mountain. Ever since that evening, Sparkling Water wondered if Keymyu was really your child, SunWalker, but was afraid to tell anyone. SunWalker's face showed horror at what he was hearing. "Wait," Wolf urged. "Many Stars said that you would react this way, but wanted you to listen to the rest before you came to any conclusions." SunWalker decided to let Wolf continue. "Your mother said, while Sparkling Water was talking, it brought back a memory when I, Many Stars, had been invited to the cave where Sacred One lived. I was just a young girl. After eating a magnificent meal with Sacred One, I felt drowsy and must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew it was morning and I was all alone in the cave. I went to the river to bathe and then went home. Soon after this, Sacred One urged me to wed your father, which was fine with me because we deeply loved each other, but it startled my family since I was so young." Sparkling Water's conversation made me begin to remember how I had had a child very soon after being wed to your father. So I decided to wait outside the cave and speak with her privately. That was when the earth first began to rumble. Since stones and dirt were dropping on my head, I raced outside, fearful for Sacred One and Sparkling Water, who were still inside the cave. Again the earth shook, and I could hear Sparkling Water scream as she ran toward the entrance. The moment she saw me, she barely got the word out, "Keymyu," while extending her hand forth with the sacred feathers. With the third tremor, the rocks from the cave entrance piled upon Sparkling Water, and her last thoughts to me were, "Sacred One is dead." He threw these feathers toward me just as the cave ceiling crashed down upon him. His thought said that Keymyu and SunWalker were the rightful heirs. So I raced out of the cave as fast as I could. Her final words were, "Make sure that Keymyu gets these feathers." And she died. "Enough," SunWalker commanded. "I do not want to hear any more," and he stormed away, kicking the dirt and gravel underneath his feet. but one kick was so strong that it sent him falling down into the ravine, where his head hit on a rock. Cloud dancers swirled around him in vision mists. "Is this the only way that we can get your attention?" came the voice of Sacred One. "Do you always need to be hit on the head in order for your heart to listen?" SunWalker did not want to hear the sound of Sacred One's voice. He tried to whirl it away with his hands. "How can I ever believe anything you taught me after learning how you tricked my wife and my mother that way? You must be the trickster rather than the Sacred One. Why was I not told that Keymyu is my sister, not my daughter?" His mother's face and voice came forward through the mist. "I have prayed to Maker of all things for help, SunWalker, so if you can hear me now, know that it is from the place where all souls meet, and listen carefully. You can heal Keymyu if you allow your heart to return to love, and there is very little time left. So allow yourself to feel the love of how Maker of all things knows no favorites. The Maker loves daughters and sisters, fathers and mothers, sons and grandchildren, all the same. Whether Keymyu is your daughter or your sister, do you not still love her?" Many stars continued. Sacred One thought carefully before choosing who should carry on his work and the sacred ways. He chose 2 women with pure hearts who would use the power not for their own advantage, but would consider the highest good of all involved. After releasing my own anger, I realized that sparkling water and I had that quality, and that we would instill the same ideals in our children. You and Keymyu are to walk hand in hand as equals, as brother and sister, to help the people remember the sacred ways. Since you are older, when you pass from the earth to the land of light, Keymyu can continue with the next generation. Thank the Sacred One for his wise choice. I am honored to be your mother, SunWalker. If I am unable to catch up with you, then know that my prayers and the help of the ancestors will be with you. Go and heal Keymyu with the love of the Maker of all things, and then quickly continue on your journey." Laughing Wolf was rubbing SunWalker's head as his eyes opened. "No need to continue, Wolf," SunWalker sighed. "I got the rest of the message directly from my mother. Now I must go and give my energy to Keymyu." All joined in a circle around SunWalker as he held Keymyu. The group extended their hands inward to lend their own energy. SunWalker asked Maker of all things to help him. "Show me what to do," he humbly asked. And he heard within, "Just be love. You need do nothing, just be the presence of love with no wants and no fears." SunWalker surrendered to the inner message and felt the glow of love radiate out from him. Embracing Keymyu, the circle of friends, then extend out into the jungle they were in, the world, and even the universe. He could feel Keymyu's heartbeat get stronger. He thanked Maker of all things and basked in the glow of love for what seemed like a long time, until Keymyu's words brought his awareness back to the jungle. "Thank you, SunWalker," Keymyu whispered. "Your radiant love has removed the toxins from my body. I feel my natural energy returning, and I have heard all about us while on the inner realm. Know that I love and honor you as my brother, the same as I loved and honored you as my father. Let us go hand in hand to this new land, and may we carry on the wisdom and ways of the sacred feathers." She handed the feathers to SunWalker, and he hugged her and wept. Keymyu continued whispering in SunWalker's ear, "While you were sending me the energy of love, Sacred One showed me his life and why he made the decisions he did. It is not for me to tell you that story. I think Sacred One should tell you his reasons himself. After we have traveled a safe distance, I hope you can find it in your heart to go within and listen to Sacred One. He will take you through the journey as though you were with him, making the decisions of what to do for the people. Once you see the obstacles in his way, maybe you will understand. He truly regrets what he did, and he was trying to work out how he would tell the people on the day of my becoming a woman ceremony, when messages from the sacred mountain tried to come forth. However, since he was not centered, due to worrying about what to tell the people and how they might reject him, he could not become clear enough to understand what the spirit of the mountain was trying to tell him. Thus he called for you, SunWalker, to receive the urgent message. Sacred One knew that where the mountain gets hot is where one hears the mountain's spirit the clearest. He also knew that your heart was clear and open, so you could bring the information to the people. That is why he sent you away on the evening the mountain exploded. Sacred One became even more clouded within and out of balance when sparkling water came to him and demanded to know if I, Keymyu, were really his child. He was just beginning to explain to her why certain things were done by him and his ancestors when rocks from the cave ceiling came tumbling down. He threw the feathers to sparkling water and told her that you and I were the rightful heirs to continue the work. But both Sacred One and sparkling water were buried under rocks from the earthquake. So you see, if his thoughts had not been clouded with human emotion and the fear of rejection for what he and his ancestors had done, he would have seen what was going to happen and would have warned the people so that all could have gotten off the island in time. This is the dilemma between the human and the divine. When we are free of human emotion, we see clearly. But when our human mind is filled with self-doubt or fear, we do not grasp what we need to know or see what we need to see. What do you mean, what he and his ancestors had done? Asked SunWalker. That is something Sacred One needs to tell you, Keymyu continued. Enough for now. I sense that someone is looking for our trail. It is someone who wants the power of these sacred feathers. We must move on quickly, and Wolf will hide our trail. SunWalker also felt the urgency of moving on to a safer place, and thus gathered the group together for instructions. Keymyu wanted to force herself to walk in order to bring oxygen and life back into her brain and muscles. One of SunWalker's companions scouted the area ahead of them while Wolf took up the rear and skillfully covered their tracks. As he walked, SunWalker allowed Keymyu's wisdom to penetrate his angry heart. Perhaps he did not know the whole story. Yes, he decided, when they had a day's journey behind them, he would take the time to commune with Sacred One on the inner realm and seek to understand what had happened from a broader perspective. And so we end part 4 in this story of Mu. We've learned the secret that Sacred One is actually the father of Keymyu and SunWalker, so that makes them the natural heirs of the sacred feathers. In part 5, SunWalker travels inward with Sacred One, and he experiences the decision that Sacred One needed to make for the continuation of kindness in the world. You will also learn why Sacred One gave Keymyu her name and what that name means. As well, you will meet the friends that SunWalker made with the community by the sea. Thank you for making thoughtful comments below, and thank you also for passing a link of this story on to your friends. I hope you continue with this story about a gentle people from Mu. Meanwhile, blessings and peace to you, and namaste.